Story 1. I live in a small town, the kind where everyone knows everyone. It's quiet, predictable, nothing much happens here, which is why what I'm about to tell you still keeps me up at night. It happened a few years ago. I had just gotten into a heated argument with my boyfriend Matt. I don't even remember what started it. Something small that spiraled into a passive-aggressive back and forth until it turned into a full-blown fight. Eventually, he stormed out, slammed the car door, and drove off. I stood there for a moment, still fuming, before turning to go back inside. Then headlights swept across the driveway again. At first, I thought he had forgotten something. The car rolled up smoothly, and he stepped out. But something was immediately off. The way he moved, his posture. Matt was always a little slouched, a little loose in the way he carried himself. But now he stood unnaturally straight, shoulders squared, head tilted slightly like he was listening for something. "Matt?" I asked, my anger cooling into confusion. He didn't answer right away. Just looked at me, like he was trying to figure something out. Then he smiled. It was wrong. I don't know how else to explain it. It wasn't a natural expression. It was too slow, too deliberate, as if he was mimicking the way people smile rather than actually feeling it. "You're right," he said finally, his voice level, controlled. "We should talk." I hesitated. My gut told me something wasn't right, but I pushed it down. This was Matt. We had just been fighting. Maybe he was trying to calm down. Still, as I stood there, I noticed something else. His clothes. They were the same ones he had been wearing minutes ago, but they weren't wrinkled anymore. The hoodie that had been slightly askew before was now perfectly centered, the drawstrings hanging evenly. His shoes, which had been muddy from earlier, were clean. I forced a laugh, trying to shake the unease creeping up my spine. "That was quick. Did you just circle the block?" He tilted his head again. "Something like that." Then he took a step forward. I can't explain why, but I instinctively took a step back. His smile widened. "What's wrong?" The words were right, but the way he said them was wrong. Too flat, almost rehearsed. "You were really upset," I said carefully. "Now you're just fine?" He blinked at me, slow and deliberate, like he was processing the words. "Yeah. I thought about what you said." I didn't say anything. I couldn't, because now that he was closer, I noticed something else. His eyes, they were the same color, the same shape, but they weren't Matt's. They looked empty, like something was looking out through them, pretending to be him. That's when he said it. "What makes you think I'm Matt?" I froze. My stomach dropped so hard I thought I was going to be sick. He was still smiling, still watching me. "What the hell are you talking about?" I whispered. He didn't answer right away, just kept watching me. Then he took another step closer. "I'm just messing with you," he said lightly. "Relax." But his voice was still wrong. It was Matt's, but the cadence was off. The way he said the words didn't match how he normally spoke. I forced myself to stay calm. "Okay, well, I'm going inside." For a second, he just stood there. Then he nodded. "Yeah, good idea." He didn't move, though. Just stood there as I backed toward the door. My hand found the doorknob and I hesitated. If I turned my back on him, I wasn't sure what would happen. I swallowed hard. "You should go home, Matt." He smiled again. "Yeah." He turned, walked back to the car, and got in. I watched as he drove off, headlights disappearing into the night. I didn't go inside right away. I just stood there, heart pounding, trying to make sense of what had just happened. And then the doorbell rang. I jumped so hard I almost screamed. I spun around, my chest tightening. I don't know why, but I knew before I even opened it. I knew who it was. I opened the door, and there he was, Matthew. His hair was messier. His hoodie was wrinkled again, the drawstrings uneven. His shoes were muddy, and he looked normal, tired, a little guilty. "Hey," he said softly. I didn't want to leave things like that." I stared at him. My throat had gone completely dry. "What?" I managed to croak. "I drove around for a while, and I just kept thinking." He frowned. "Are you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." I opened my mouth, closed it. The other Matt had just been here. I had just watched him leave. And now? No, I wasn't going to think about that. I forced a smile. Yeah, I'm fine. I stepped aside, letting him in. But even as we talked, even as we made up, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had happened, that something else had been here, that something had been pretending to be him. And worst of all, I didn't know why. Story 2, I used to be a manager at a big box retailer's computer repair section a few years ago. It was one of those places that dealt with everything. Basic virus removals, hardware upgrades, and even the occasional forensic data recovery for people who had lost something important. Nothing glamorous, just a job. This happened on a normal weekday morning. I was in the back room, doing my usual routine, balancing paperwork while keeping an eye on a customer's PC running malware scans. Company policy was strict. We weren't allowed to go through personal files unless there was a legal reason to do so, but the customer had left his screensaver set to cycle through his My Pictures folder, so while the antivirus did its thing, the monitor flashed through images, kids' birthday parties, family vacations, car shows, just everyday snapshots. I wasn't really paying attention, but from the corner of my eye, I swear I saw something. A woman, from the shoulders up, pale skin, dark hair, and her throat slit wide open. I blinked, turned my head fully, but by the time my eyes focused, the slideshow had already moved on. Back to a picture of some old muscle car at a car meet. For a second, I just sat there. My stomach felt weird, like when you miss a step going downstairs. I told myself I was imagining things. Maybe it was a trick of the light, or maybe one of the car photos had some weird glare that looked like something else. I went back to my work, shaking it off, but an hour later it happened again. I was carrying another customer's computer to the back, passing the same monitor, and just for a split second, in my peripheral vision, I saw what looked like a body, stuffed inside the trunk of a car. Blood, hands bound. I froze mid-step. I didn't even put the computer down. My heart was pounding. This time I didn't brush it off. I set the customer's PC aside, went to the monitor, and just stared at it. I watched as the photos cycled through. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, cars, kids, family dinners, and then 2 bodies in a shallow grave in the woods. It was grainy, low light, but there was no mistaking it. The way their limbs were bent, the disturbed soil around them. It wasn't a horror movie still. It wasn't a joke. This was real. I didn't breathe. And then the next image flashed up. A severed hand in a kitchen drawer. I backed away from the screen so fast I knocked over a stack of parts. I felt lightheaded. This wasn't normal. This wasn't okay. I grabbed my coworker, Dave. Didn't tell him much, just that he needed to come to the back. Now we sat there side by side, watching that damn screensaver, waiting. And then he saw it too. Jesus Christ, he muttered. He looked at me. Dude, we need to call the cops. I nodded. I didn't even hesitate. I went straight to the general manager, explained the situation, had him come back and watch. His face went pale. He agreed. Police needed to be called. 15 minutes later, 2 guys walked into the store. One of them was the customer whose PC we had. The other, I had no idea. I approached them immediately. Hey, your computer's not ready yet, I said, trying to sound casual. It's going to take a little longer. But the guy frowned. I was told someone found some disturbing photos? My stomach dropped. That's when the other guy, the one with him, started laughing. I just stared at him. It wasn't normal laughter. It was a weird, knowing chuckle. Oh, you idiot, he said to my customer, shaking his head. My customer turned red. Shit, he muttered under his breath. I was still standing there, confused. My boss was too. Then the second guy, still smirking, turned to us. He's a detective. I didn't say anything. He took his work home, the guy continued, and apparently he didn't realize his case photos were being used as a goddamn screensaver. I felt my pulse in my temples. I looked at the customer, waiting for him to confirm it. He exhaled sharply, running a hand down his face. Yeah, he admitted. It's an open case. I shouldn't have. He shook his head. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then my general manager cleared his throat. Well, maybe be more careful next time. The detective nodded, looking embarrassed as hell. Yeah, thanks for, not going through my files. I didn't say anything, just nodded stiffly. The two men left, and just like that, it was over. But I couldn't shake it. That first image, the one I'd seen in my peripheral vision, the woman with her throat cut. I saw it before I was looking for it, just for a second, like it wanted to be seen. Story 3. I was never someone who believed in ghosts. Weird stuff? Sure. I've had my fair share of unsettling experiences, things I couldn't quite explain. But full-blown, lights flicking on by themselves, hair standing on end, bone-deep terror. That wasn't something I ever thought I'd feel in my own home, until that night. At the time, my wife and I were living with my mother-in-law in a house she had just bought a few months earlier. It was an older home, nothing too fancy, but solid brick exterior, creaky wood floors, one of those places that had character, and apparently something else. The first couple of months, we all had these moments, a feeling like someone was watching from the next room, a shadow you thought you saw from the corner of your eye, only for it to disappear when you turned your head. Little things. Things you tell yourself don't mean anything because you don't want them to mean anything. The dogs were the first to notice. There were 3 of them, my German Shepherd, a small but fearless terrier, and my mother-in-law's old Labrador. Good dogs, smart dogs, and that night they were the only ones who realized what was coming before it happened. We were all in the living room, backs to the hallway. It was late, maybe 10, maybe later. I remember we had a movie playing, though I couldn't tell you what it was. Something mindless, something to wind down after a long day. My wife was curled up next to me on the couch, and the dogs were lying on the floor in their usual spots. Then my shepherd's ears perked up. I noticed it immediately because I knew that look, that stiff, locked-in focus. He was looking down the hallway behind us. I followed his gaze, but it was dark back there. The light was off, and from where I sat, I couldn't see much past the first few feet. The terrier lifted his head next, his little body tense like a coiled spring, eyes fixed on the same spot. The Labrador was the last to react, but when he did, he let out a low, rumbling growl. I felt the hairs on my arms stand up. "You see something?" I asked my shepherd, like he was going to answer me. His ears twitched, but he didn't look away. My wife noticed then. "What are they looking at?" "No idea." I turned slightly, trying to peer into the darkness. Nothing, just the hallway leading to the bedrooms. The dogs didn't move. They just kept staring. A minute passed, then another. That's when the growling started. Deep, guttural, primal. Not playful, not uncertain. It was the kind of growl that meant something was wrong. My shepherd's lips curled back just slightly, his body tense like he was ready to lunge. The terrier was trembling but standing his ground, a sharp little snarl pulling at his mouth. Even the old lab, who hardly reacted to anything these days, was growling now, ears pinned back. I turned and looked again. My eyes were adjusted to the dark by now, but there was still nothing there. I swallowed my throat dry. "Probably a mouse or something," I muttered, more for myself than for my wife. She didn't answer. I could feel her shift beside me, uneasy. 5 minutes. 5 minutes of this. The dogs weren't relaxing. If anything, they were more keyed up, more on edge. The shepherd took a step forward, every muscle in his body taut, and then, in perfect silence, the hallway light turned on. Not flickered, not dimmed and brightened. The switch flipped. We both saw it. I don't know what I expected in that moment. Maybe a bang, a rush of cold air, something. But there was nothing. Just that sharp click, and the hallway bathed in yellow light. And the dogs lost their minds. The shepherd barked, deep and furious, rushing toward the hallway, but stopping short of crossing into it. The terrier yapped frantically, hopping back and forth like he was trying to decide whether to run or attack. Even the lab barked, his old joints straining as he lurched to his feet. My wife screamed. I didn't even realize I was standing until I felt my pulse pounding in my temples. I grabbed her arm, yanking her close as I took a step toward the hallway. My body was screaming at me not to go, but I had to see. I reached the doorway. The light switch was up, just like someone had flipped it. There was no one there. No open windows, no draft, no logical explanation, just the light. I stared down the empty hallway for what felt like forever, heart hammering in my chest. The air felt thick, electric, like the charge before a storm. Then, just as suddenly as it came, the feeling was gone. The dogs stopped barking, though they didn't relax. They stayed close, pressing against our legs, still watching, still waiting. I don't know how long we stood there. Eventually, my wife whispered, "Turn it off." I reached out, flicked the switch. Darkness swallowed the hallway again. We didn't sleep that night. We didn't talk about it the next day either. Not really, but that was the last time any of us ignored the dogs when they stared at something we couldn't see. Story 4. I was 17. I remember that night too well, probably because I still think about it sometimes, and I still can't explain it. I lived with my parents in a small house, nothing special. My room was tiny, just enough space for a bed, a chest of drawers, and a desk squeezed into the corner. The walls were thin, and I could hear everything going on in the rest of the house. TV murmuring in the living room, my dad's occasional cough, the clinking of dishes from the kitchen. Home wasn't always the easiest place to be. That night it was unbearable. I don't even remember exactly what set me off, but I was breaking down. Something had happened, an argument maybe, or just the weight of everything piling up. You know how sometimes you just hit a wall? Like you physically can't take it anymore? That was me. I was sitting on the floor beside my bed, hugging my knees, crying so hard I could barely breathe. The kind of crying that shakes your whole body, the kind that makes your chest hurt. I wanted to talk to someone, needed to, but the only phone in the house was downstairs and my parents were there. No privacy, no escape. I felt trapped, and I remember it so clearly. I thought, no, I screamed in my head. Please, someone, just help me. It wasn't a prayer. I wasn't religious. It wasn't directed at anyone, not God, not a ghost, not anything. Just a desperate, silent plea into the void. And then, I swear on everything, I felt it. A hand on my shoulder, not a light touch, not like a breeze or the brush of my own hair. A hand, solid, warm, fingers pressing gently but firmly into my skin. A palm resting on the curve where my neck met my shoulder. I stopped crying instantly. My whole body went rigid. My breath caught in my throat. I was facing away from my chest of drawers, and I knew there was no one behind me. My room was small. There was no space for anyone to be standing there, and I hadn't heard the door open. I hadn't heard anything, but the hand was there. I could feel each individual finger, the pressure of it, the warmth. I didn't move. I couldn't. It stayed there for what felt like forever. Maybe a minute, maybe less. And then, as suddenly as it had appeared, it was gone. No lingering sensation, no gradual fading, just gone. I sat there staring at the wall, my heart pounding so hard I thought I might pass out. The room was silent except for the distant hum of the television downstairs. My skin still tingled where the hand had been. I didn't turn around. I don't know why. I just couldn't. Eventually I got up, climbed into bed, and pulled the covers up to my chin. I lay there staring at the ceiling, wide awake until the sun came up. I never told anyone, and I never felt it again. Story 5. I've always believed there's a logical explanation for everything. Even the weirdest things can be explained away if you think about them hard enough. But that night, I don't know. I just don't know. It was a little after 10 when I set out to pick up my buddy Aaron from the airport. His girlfriend Liz rode with me. She wanted to see him the second he got off the plane. It wasn't a long drive, maybe 45 minutes, but the fastest route took us through a part of town I wasn't familiar with. Apple Maps had me turn onto this long, lonely back road, the kind of road that feels like it hasn't seen another car in hours. No streetlights, no houses, just the occasional sign telling me I was going the right way. For the first 15 minutes, we hardly said a word. The silence of the road had a way of creeping into the car, making everything feel heavier. Just dark trees on either side, nothing to look at, nothing to break up the monotony until we saw the train. It came up alongside us on the right, matching our speed almost exactly. It wasn't moving fast, maybe 45 miles an hour, same as us. At first, I thought it was kind of cool. You don't usually get to pace a train like that. That's weird, Liz said, watching it through her window. I've never been this close to one while driving. I nodded, but what struck me as odd was how quiet it was. No clanking, no horn, no sound of wheels grinding against the tracks, just the low rumble you feel more than hear. I remember thinking maybe the wind was carrying the noise away. We kept driving, and after a couple of minutes, we passed a train yard on the left. It was exactly what you'd picture if you were watching some old horror movie. Rows of rusted-out cars, massive steel beams stacked up, towers with blinking red lights in the distance. But what got me was how endless it felt. "How big is this place?" Liz muttered, staring out the window. I didn't know. We had to have been driving past it for at least 5 minutes, and it just kept going. Train cars, steel, empty loading docks, floodlights that flickered like they hadn't been maintained in years. But there were no people, no workers, no security trucks, just dead silence. I felt a weird pressure in my chest, like the air had thickened. Liz must have felt it too, because she shifted in her seat and crossed her arms. "This is creeping me out," she admitted. I tried to laugh it off. "Yeah, it's a little eerie." We kept driving. The train was still there, blocking our view on the right, and the train yard still stretched onto the left. 10 minutes had passed. It shouldn't have gone on this long. I checked the time. It felt like we'd been driving forever, but the clock hadn't moved much. 10:27 p.m. That didn't seem right. Liz suddenly sucked in a sharp breath. "Did you see that?" I glanced over. "See what?" She was staring out at the train yard, eyes wide, hands gripping the fabric of her hoodie. She shook her head. "I thought I saw something. A person. But they were wrong." "Wrong how?" I asked, my grip tightening on the wheel. She didn't answer. She just kept staring out the window, her breath picking up. I could see her reflection in the glass, her face pale. I tried to focus on the road, but my pulse was starting to race. The train had been with us for too long. The train yard had been with us for too long. I didn't want to say it, but something wasn't right. We finally hit a stretch of road with more lights, a couple of gas stations, the signs of civilization. The moment we turned off that road, the pressure in my chest eased. Liz let out a breath like she'd been holding it the entire time. We picked up Aaron at the airport, and as soon as he got in the car, we told him everything. The endless train yard, the silent train, the figure Liz thought she saw. "Damn," he said. "You sure you weren't just freaking yourselves out?" I wanted to believe that. I needed to believe that. "Let's go back," he said. "Show me." I hesitated. Something in my gut told me not to. But Aaron was my best friend, and I didn't want to seem paranoid. So I turned the car around and retraced our steps. But it wasn't there. No train yard, no rusted-out cars, no towers, no endless stretch of steel and concrete, just dark trees and empty fields. Liz and I both sat frozen, staring out the windows, trying to make sense of it. "We drove past it," she whispered. "We saw it. It was right here." I slowed down, checking the GPS, but it showed nothing unusual, just a normal back road. I pulled over and got out of the car, half expecting to see the train tracks at least. But there was nothing. No rails, no signs, no indication a train had ever been there. Aaron rolled down the window. "You guys messing with me?" Liz shook her head. I swear to God, it was here." I don't know what happened that night. I don't know where we were or what we saw, but I do know one thing. When we drove home, the trip felt much shorter. Story 6. Babysitting wasn't new to me. I'd done it plenty of times, and I never had a problem with it. Easy money. Sit in someone's house, keep a kid alive, watch TV, and raid the fridge if they were cool with it. The house I was in that night? It was old, yeah, but not creepy. At least, not the kind of creepy that made you feel watched. It was just a house, and I was just there to babysit the neighbor's kid while her dad worked late. Now the dog? The dog was a different story. They had this rat terrier, one of those little wiry things that shakes all the time and barks at dust particles. It barked at everything. The wind, shadows. Mister, I hated that dog. That night, everything was normal. The kid went to bed around 8, and I was parked in the living room, feet tucked under me on the couch, watching some dumb reality show. The house was quiet, aside from the occasional tick of the radiator kicking on. I wasn't scared. There was no reason to be. Then the dog started up. At first, I ignored it. It would bark at its own reflection if it caught sight of it, so I figured it was nothing. But then I realized it wasn't barking at the door like it usually did. It was in the corner of the living room, staring at absolutely nothing, losing its mind. "Shut up," I hissed at it, but it didn't even acknowledge me, just kept yapping at the empty corner. Then out of nowhere, it stopped barking and bolted into the hallway like it was chasing something. Its nails scrabbled against the hardwood as it darted into another room, barking again. Then it ran back into the living room, back to the corner, barking even louder this time. My stomach twisted. It felt wrong. Like the air had shifted. The house had felt normal all night, but now there was something off, something I couldn't explain. The dog ran off again, this time into the kitchen, where it went ballistic. Non-stop, high-pitched barking, the kind that makes your teeth clench. I sat frozen for a second, every hair on my body standing on end. It wasn't barking at a window. It wasn't barking at the door. It was barking inside the house. Afraid the kid would wake up, I finally got up and stormed toward the kitchen. "What is your problem?" I snapped, rounding the corner. And then I stopped cold. Every single cabinet in the kitchen was open. Not halfway open, not slightly ajar. All of them wide open. The doors were gaping, like something had thrown them open all at once. The dog stood in the middle of the kitchen, growling now, low and steady. The fur on its back bristled up like a porcupine. My stomach dropped so hard I thought I'd puke. I had been alone the entire time. Nobody had walked past me. There was no sound, no creaking hinges, no movement, just open. I gripped the door frame so hard my knuckles went white. My breathing was too loud, my heartbeat slamming in my ears. I wanted to run, but my feet wouldn't move. The dog let out a long, trembling whine, backing up toward me. I didn't even think. I scooped it up, turned, and bolted to the living room, nearly tripping over my own feet. I sat on the couch, shaking, the dog trembling against my chest. It wasn't barking anymore, just staring toward the kitchen, panting hard. I didn't go back in right away. I sat there stiff as a board, too scared to even turn the TV off, because the silence felt like it would swallow me whole. I kept trying to come up with an explanation. Earthquake? No, I'd have felt it. A draft. That wasn't how drafts worked. A prank? No one was there but me and a sleeping 6-year-old. After what felt like forever, I forced myself up. My legs felt like they didn't belong to me as I crept back into the kitchen. The cabinets were still open, still wrong. I don't know what made me do it, but I whispered, "Stop." I felt stupid saying it, but I couldn't take it. I needed whatever it was to stop. I reached out, my hands shaking, and shut the nearest cabinet. Then another, and another. I closed them all as fast as I could, my breath coming in short gasps. I didn't look around. I didn't check for shadows or reflections in the glass. I just shut everything, grabbed the dog, and practically ran back to the couch, waiting for the dad to get home. When he finally did, I nearly jumped out of my skin at the sound of the front door opening. "You okay?" he asked, giving me a weird look. I nodded, too afraid to say anything. I wanted to tell him. I wanted to ask if anything like this had ever happened before, but I didn't. I left as fast as I could and told my parents I wasn't babysitting there again. They never believed me. I still get chills when I think about it. Story 7. My grandmother's death wasn't sudden, but it still hit the family hard. She had been the quiet foundation of our household, the kind of presence you didn't notice until it was gone. When she passed, the house felt different. We're a traditional Odia family, and that meant rituals, a lot of them. Some of them made sense to me, like the funeral procession, the cremation, the prayers. But others felt strange, like the lamp ritual. I didn't question it at first. Everyone was mourning, and this wasn't the time to play the skeptic. The way it was explained to me was simple. Before my father and his brothers left with her body to Puri for cremation, we had to prepare a large clay container. It would be filled with sand, and an earthen lamp, called a deepa, would be placed inside, lit. Then the whole thing would be covered and locked inside her room, which no one was allowed to enter until my father and uncle's return. The belief? That once the room was reopened, the patterns left in the sand would reveal the path her soul had taken. I'd heard stories. When my grandfather died, they said a clear ladder shape had formed in the sand. Steps, a direct path to heaven. I thought it was nonsense, just some old superstition my family clung to for comfort. I was about to find out how wrong I was. The ritual begins. The morning after her death, everything moved fast. Relatives poured in, the house filled with murmurs and the scent of incense. The women cried, the men made arrangements. I mostly watched, helping when asked, but staying out of the way. Before my father and uncles left, we set up the lamp ritual. I stood in the hallway, watching as my cousin Rakesh carefully poured sand into the container. We made sure it was level, smooth. Then my uncle placed the earthen lamp in the center. The oil was poured in, the wick was lit. A small, flickering flame in the middle of an ocean of sand. Then they covered it with a lid. The room was locked. I remember my aunt whispering a quiet prayer as she twisted the key in the lock. And that was it. With my grandmother's body loaded into the van, my father, uncles, and some elders left for Puri. The house fell into an eerie silence after that. For the next few hours, I tried not to think about the locked room. I wandered through the house, checking on my mother and aunts, eating when someone forced a plate into my hands. But I couldn't shake this feeling, this weight. The room was at the end of the hallway. Every time I passed it, something in my chest tightened. It was just a locked door, just a clay pot filled with sand. But I swear I could feel something behind that door. Once, around midnight, I got up to use the bathroom and passed by the room. I stopped. I don't know why, but I stood there staring at the door. The house was dead quiet. I could hear my own breathing, hear the creak of wood under my feet. And then, something shifted. Not a sound, not a knock, just a feeling, like something moved on the other side. I backed away and hurried back to my room. The next evening, my father and uncles returned. The cremation was done. The rituals had been performed. My grandmother's ashes were scattered. The house filled up again, but there was a new energy in the air, a nervous one. Everyone knew what was coming next, the unlocking. We all gathered outside the room. My aunt held the key but hesitated. Should we wait? She asked. No, my father said. His voice was hoarse, exhausted. Let's get it over with. She unlocked the door. The smell of stale air and faint burnt oil drifted out. Inside, everything was untouched. The room was exactly as my grandmother had left it, except for the container. My uncle lifted the lid, and we all saw it. The sand, which had been smooth when we left it, was no longer untouched. Patterns had formed around the deepa. Wheels, not vague circles, not smudges. Clear, defined wheels surrounding the lamp on all sides. I felt my skin prickle. Someone gasped behind me. I heard my aunt whisper, Jagannath's chariot. I swallowed, my mouth dry. The Jagannath temple in Puri, the Rath Yatra, the festival where massive wooden chariots carry the idols through the streets. The path to salvation. I felt dizzy. No one had touched that sand. The room had been locked. There was no way anyone could have made those shapes, but they were there. And as I stared at those wheels, perfectly imprinted in the sand, I realized something. I had doubted it, thought it was all nonsense. But something had happened in that room. Something I couldn't explain. Story 8. I was living in New Mexico back then, early 2000s, doing odd jobs and trying to figure out life like everyone else. That night I was driving east on Highway 60, somewhere between Vaughn and Fort Sumner. If you know the area, you know how empty it gets out there. Just long, straight stretches of road, dry land, and an occasional abandoned building that looks like it hasn't seen a person in years. No streetlights, barely any traffic, just you, the dark, and whatever your headlights decide to show you. My friend Jason was in the passenger seat. We weren't really talking much, just cruising with the radio low, letting the hum of the road fill the silence. We had about an hour left to Fort Sumner, and I was just focused on keeping the car steady. Then I noticed it, a bright light in the rearview mirror, right side just behind us. It was so bright that for a second, I thought it was a car coming up fast, with their high beams on. But no, it wasn't bouncing like headlights do on uneven road. It was steady, unmoving, like it was floating. I didn't say anything at first. Maybe my brain didn't want to acknowledge it, but Jason noticed too. "You see that?" he asked, shifting in his seat to look at the mirror. "Yeah," I said, trying not to sound weird about it. "Train tracks are over there. Maybe it's a locomotive or something." Jason frowned. "I don't hear a train." I didn't either, and I should have. Even if the windows were up, even if we had the radio playing low, a train that close would make some kind of noise. The deep rumble of steel wheels on tracks. The horn. Something. But there was nothing, just silence. The light stayed with us, keeping perfect pace. I kept checking the mirror, expecting it to drop back or pull ahead, but it didn't. Just a steady, blinding glow off to the right. Jason rolled down his window. "What the hell are you doing?" I asked, glancing over. "Trying to see what it is." He stuck his head out, looking back. The moment he did, he jerked back inside, slamming the window up so fast I heard the rubber seal squeak. "Dude, it's gone," he said. He was breathing hard, like he'd just run up a flight of stairs. I flicked my eyes to the mirror. He was right. The light had vanished, not faded out, not drifted off. It was just gone. A cold chill ran up my arms even though the car was warm. Jason turned to me and I could see it on his face. He was freaked the hell out. And Jason wasn't the type to scare easy. We pulled over. I don't even remember deciding to. I just did. Maybe I thought stopping would give us a second to process whatever just happened. I left the engine running. Neither of us got out right away. We just sat there listening to the nothingness around us. Then something else hit me. I turned to Jason. "Wait, weren't the train tracks supposed to be right there?" His face went pale. We both got out. The headlights cut across the dirt and scrub, casting long shadows. We walked to the edge of the road, where the light had been keeping pace with us. No tracks, no railroad, nothing. Just flat land and dry brush stretching into the dark. We both stood there, looking at that empty space where the train tracks should have been, where a train couldn't have been. Neither of us said a word. Then Jason grabbed my arm. Hard. "Let's go," he said. I didn't argue. We got back in the car, slammed the doors, and I threw it into drive so fast the tires skidded a little on the asphalt. We didn't talk for the rest of the drive. We just drove. The weirdest part? We never saw another car that whole stretch. No headlights, no taillights, no sign that anyone else was out there. Just us, and whatever the hell that was. Story 9. I always thought it was the houses. Every time we moved, every new base, every new rental, every new town, I swore there was something off. A door that wouldn't stay shut, a cupboard that creaked open in the middle of the night, a voice whispering my name when I was home alone. My parents dismissed it, of course. Old houses settle, they said. It's the wind, or you probably just forgot where you put it. It wasn't until university that someone pointed out the obvious. "It's not the houses," my housemate Josh said one night, sitting cross-legged on the floor of our grimy student kitchen. "It's you." I laughed it off, but the thought stuck with me. And then one night I stopped laughing. It was late, past 3 a.m., and I was walking home from my job at the bar. The city was quiet, the way it always was at that hour, just the occasional distant siren and the hum of streetlights buzzing like dying insects. My house was down a privately owned alley, one of those narrow, shadowy paths that felt like it belonged in a horror film. It was lined with high fences, barely wide enough to fit a car, and at that hour it was pitch black. I hated walking down it, but I also hated the longer route home, and my feet were killing me after an 8-hour shift. So I turned down the alley like I always did. I was halfway down when I heard the footsteps. Fast. Coming up behind me. I barely had time to react before someone grabbed my shoulder and spun me around. The man reeked of alcohol, his breath hot and sour in my face. He was slurring something, words tumbling over each other, barely making sense. His hands were on me before I could process what was happening, touching my arms, grabbing at my waist, tugging at the hem of my shirt. "Come on, just lift it up," he slurred. "Let me see." I shoved him, hard. He stumbled back, surprised, but not enough. "Hey, don't be like that," he said, grinning. "You're pretty." My heart was hammering, my brain scrambling for a way out. The alley was too narrow to run past him. My house, my front door, was still a good 20 feet away. Even if I made it, I'd have to fumble with my keys, and I knew he'd be on me before I could unlock it. The window. We had an alarm on the downstairs window, the kind that would blare if the glass was hit. It was loud enough to wake my housemates, and if they woke up, he'd be outnumbered. I made a break for it. I didn't get far. His hands yanked me back, fingers digging into my arm. I twisted, kicked at his shin, but he held on. "Where are you going?" he laughed. "We're just talking." I shoved him again. This time he got angry. The smile disappeared. His grip tightened, and then he hit me. Not a slap, a full force punch to the side of my face that sent me stumbling against the fence. My vision blurred, pain blooming across my cheek. My ears were ringing, and then the alarm. It split the night open like a scream. I barely had time to process it before I saw movement in the house. Lights flicking on, shadows shifting. The man froze. Then he bolted. I heard the door slam open behind me, Josh's voice shouting, "Hey!" But the man was already gone, vanishing into the night. I stood there trembling, one hand against my throbbing face. The next day, the police came. They took my statement, watched the CCTV footage from the cameras at either end of the alley. He was there, clear as day, stumbling down the street following me, grabbing me. But the worst of it, what happened in the alley, was hidden from view. "Not enough evidence," the officer said, sounding apologetic. "We'll keep an eye out," but I nodded, barely listening, because there was something else. After the police left, Josh and I checked the footage ourselves. I wanted to see it, the exact moment the alarm had gone off. We rewound, played it back. I could see myself struggling, the man grabbing me, hitting me, and then nothing. No movement near the window, no animal, no bird, no reason for the alarm to go off. It had never gone off before. It never went off again. I don't think about it often, but when I do, I remember what Josh said. It's not the houses, it's you. And I wonder. Story 10. I don't know how to explain what happened that night. I don't think I'll ever be able to. But I can tell you what I saw. I was in my basement, my bedroom technically. I've always liked having my space away from the rest of the house. It's quieter, darker, cooler. I could sleep in as long as I wanted without sunlight creeping in, and no one ever really bothered me down there. That night, I went to bed like normal. Nothing felt off, no strange noises, no weird feelings in the air. Just another night. I don't know what time I woke up, but it was late. Middle of the night, the kind of wake up where you don't know why you opened your eyes, but something told you to. The room was still, quiet, just the usual hum of the house settling. I rolled over, and that's when I saw it. A figure, tall, maybe 5'10", built like a guy, just standing there, right next to my bed. I froze. My heart slammed in my chest, but I couldn't move. The figure was standing between my bed and the stairs, the only way out. No features, no face, just a solid black shape, darker than the room around it. It didn't move. It didn't make a sound. I could feel it looking at me. I wanted to scream, but my throat locked up. My body refused to move. The only thing I could think to do was pray. So I did. I squeezed my eyes shut and started praying in my head, over and over, like a desperate chant. When I finally got the courage to look again, it was gone. I lay there, heart hammering, straining to hear anything. Nothing. Just silence. I told myself I imagined it. Sleep paralysis. A dream. my mind playing tricks. I forced myself to believe that until I fell back asleep. Morning came, and I tried to shake it off. I had a weird feeling in my gut, but I ignored it. I got up, grabbed my towel, and went to take a shower. The bathroom is also in the basement, just a few steps from my room. No windows, just a vent. It's small, kind of cramped, but it does the job. I turned on the water, got in, and tried to wake myself up. Then the curtain moved. Not a little sway from the air. No, it slid, like someone pulled it. I spun around, half expecting to see someone standing there. Nothing. My heart pounded. I stood there, dripping, staring at the edge of the curtain. I even checked the vent, thinking maybe the heat kicked on, but it hadn't. The air was still. The curtain had moved. I rushed through the rest of my shower, refusing to close my eyes for too long. I stepped out, towel around my waist, still shaking off the nerves when I heard it. 3 plucked notes from my cello. It was sitting against my chair, untouched, right where I left it the night before. Pluck, 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 the D string. The sound rang out through the basement, slow and deliberate. I bolted upstairs. I told myself I was being ridiculous, that I was just jumpy from last night. That's what I kept repeating in my head until I saw my brother. He was sitting at the kitchen table, scrolling through his phone like nothing happened. But there was a mark on his face, a handprint, a massive, pale handprint stretched across his cheek and neck. Fingers too long, too wide to be his own. I stopped dead in my tracks. Dude, what the hell happened to your face? He frowned, rubbing his cheek. What? The handprint. He looked at me like I was crazy. He got up, went to the mirror, and his face drained of color. What the hell? Did you wake up at all last night? I asked. Number I slept fine. I felt my stomach drop. I don't know what was in my room last night. I don't know what it wanted, but I think I got lucky because I don't think it was there for me. Thanks for watching. Don't leave before leaving a like to this video. Also hit the subscribe button to support my work. And as always, have a horrific nightmare, my dear.